if the whole world is drowning in debt? Then who are the creditors? Just think about it. Today, almost every country in the world is in debt. The United States has trillions of dollars in debt. So does Japan. Europe does too. China as well. Even the oil-rich Arab countries carry debt. So doesn't a simple question come to mind? If everyone is drowning in debt, then who exactly are the creditors? The answer is very different from what you might initially think. Because in reality, the world is not indebted to a single power or institution. In a sense, the world is indebted to itself. It all started with wars. The foundations of the monetary system we use today were not laid by banks, but by wars. In 1694, England was at war with France. But there was a problem. The king had run out of money to finance the war. The gold in the treasury was running out. So he went to wealthy merchants and said, "Give me money now, and I will repay you later, with interest, from future tax revenues." At first the merchants found the proposal unusual, but eventually they accepted it. For the first time in history, governments began spending money today that they expected to earn in the future. This was the beginning of what we now call government bonds. Debt wasn't a bad thing. Over time, countries realized something. Borrowing money was not a sign of weakness, it was a sign of strength. Because nobody lends money to someone they do not trust. If people are willing to lend you money, it means they have confidence in you. As a result, the ability to borrow became a matter of prestige for nations. In the past, empires fought wars to obtain gold. Now, they could issue bonds and raise money. The game had completely changed. What is the situation today? Today, total global debt stands at roughly $320 trillion. It is a number so large that it is difficult even to imagine. It is approximately 3 times the total value produced by the global economy. In other words, humanity is living on top of a massive mountain of debt. But here is the interesting part. Most of this debt is actually owed by countries to their own citizens and institutions. For example, most of America's debt is not owed to China. It is owed to American banks, American investment funds, American pension funds, and the Federal Reserve. In a sense, a significant portion of America's debt is owed to America itself. Can China buy America? This is something people often hear. America is indebted to China. Yes, that is partly true, but not to the extent most people imagine. China's holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds may seem large, but they represent only a small portion of America's total debt. In reality, America's biggest creditor is its own financial system. So the situation is far more complicated than the idea that China is taken over America. The world lends money to itself. The story becomes even more interesting. Japan lends money to the United States. The United States provides credit to other countries. Europe extends loans to developing nations. Those countries then invest the foreign currency they earn back into U.S. Treasury bonds. Money constantly circulates through the system. It's as if everyone at the table is playing poker with chips borrowed from one another. The only condition for the game to continue is that nobody leaves the table. Who really holds the power? Most people assume that countries are the most powerful actors. But in the financial world, there is another reality. Sometimes the real power belongs to the markets. If investors lose confidence in a country, its currency can lose value. Interest rates can soar. Its economy can fall into crisis. Elections may determine who governs, but sometimes markets determine who survives. Where does money actually come from? Here's a fascinating point that many people do not know. When central banks purchase government bonds, they create new money. That money enters the financial system. This is why a large portion of the money circulating in the modern economy is, in one way or another, the result of debt. It may sound strange, but much of the money we use today exists because of a borrowing relationship somewhere in the system. The system is built on trust. This system has worked for many years. Why? Because people and institutions believe that governments will be able to manage and refinance their debts. The key word here is trust. As long as trust exists, the system continues to function. But when trust disappears, things change. What happens when trust is lost? We have seen it before. We saw it in Greece. We saw it in Argentina. We saw it in Sri Lanka. When countries reach a point where they may not be able to repay their debts, investors become fearful. Interest rates rise. Capital leaves the country. The economy tightens. People lose their jobs. And eventually, heavy costs are paid. The most surprising part. Most of us assume that governments will one day pay off all their debt. But the reality is, there is no such plan. Seriously, there isn't. Governments generally repay old debt by issuing new debt. A bond reaches maturity and is paid off. A new bond is issued to replace it. That is how the system operates. In a way, it resembles a constantly renewed subscription. What if America paid off all its debt? At first, that sounds wonderful. But it might not be as beneficial as you think. The world's largest banks, pension funds, and investment firms would lose one of their safest assets. The dollar-based financial system could be shaken. Markets could collapse. Strangely enough, the system is not designed for governments to have no debt at all. It is designed for them to continue borrowing in a controlled and sustainable way. Where is the real problem? Up to this point, everything may seem perfectly normal. But there is a problem. Interest income is not distributed equally. The gains generated by debt tend to flow toward large investors, funds, and financial institutions. Meanwhile, the tax burden and economic costs are often borne by ordinary people. As a result, as the world accumulates more debt, wealth inequality tends to increase as well. Conclusion. Ultimately, what keeps the global economy running is not money itself, but people's belief in the promises they make to one another. As long as that belief survives, the system will continue to function. The question is, how long can it last?